the tainted blood in the daughter-in-law's womb, and the incest that would shatter their dynasty. That summer, the oppressive sun beat down on the small town of Cedar Creek, bleaching the concrete roads bone-white and searing the old tin roofs on Anna's small home to a dull silver. But no one knew that behind the house's quiet facade, a horrifying secret was left to fester. Anna sat motionless on the porch, her fingers tracing the condensation on a glass of long-melted iced tea. Her vacant eyes stared down the dusty dirt road that vanished into the haze of the horizon. At 24, the innocent smile she once owned was gone, replaced by a somber gaze that held the weight of a story she could never tell. Her husband, Kevin, had been away in Dallas on business for over 2 years. Whenever he called, he'd make small talk about the town, never once asking how she was truly doing, or if she was suffering under his mother's roof. Outsiders saw a fairy tale: Anna, married to a handsome man from the wealthiest, most influential family in the region. But they couldn't know that behind those heavy iron gates, she was withering away, worn down by the constant, cruel words of her mother-in-law and the cold dinners where the only sound was her own sigh. There were times Anna wanted to let it all go, to just walk away. But whenever that thought sparked within her, Arthur, her father-in-law, would gently console her. "Hang in there, my child," he would say. "I know you have a good heart. Good things will eventually find their way to you." And then, Mr. Harrison arrived. No one could have guessed that the appearance of this polished man in his 60s, driving a luxury car with a Los Angeles plate, would be the catalyst for the darkest chapter of Anna's life. He first came on a cold winter day, bearing gifts for her father-in-law. The second time was at the start of summer, claiming to be passing through on business. For some reason, each visit stirred a strange unease in Anna's heart. It wasn't affection. It was a sense of familiarity so deep. She felt as if this man knew her past better than she knew it herself. Once, she caught his gaze as he stood staring pensively at the old rain barrels in the yard. His expression wasn't that of a guest, but of a man silently questioning a cruel twist of fate. She didn't know what was on his mind. Only that from the day Mr. Harrison appeared, her life felt like it had been forced down a dead-end street with no escape. The folks in Cedar Creek used to whisper that a girl would have to be blessed for 3 generations to marry into the Thompson family. They were vastly wealthy, influential, and had only one son, Kevin. Because of this, for their wedding years ago, Eleanor, Anna's mother-in-law, had thrown the most lavish wedding the town had ever seen. Everyone believed Anna was set for life. But only she understood that behind those red-painted gates was a living hell where her every move was scrutinized. On their wedding night, Kevin had whispered to her, "You have to be clever with Mother. She's difficult, but she appreciates someone who knows their place." Anna had only smiled and nodded, never imagining his words would become the shackles she'd wear for years. Eleanor, a woman in her 60s, was small in stature, but her eyes were as sharp as knives. If Anna came back from the market, she would sneer, "What is this meat? It looks pale. Don't you know how to shop?" When dinner was served, she would smack her lips in disgust. "This soup is as bland as dishwater. Who can swallow this?" The cruelty reached its peak less than 3 months after Kevin had left. Anna accidentally bumped her arm against the stone edge of the well, leaving a dark bruise. When Eleanor saw it, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. "A young bride, already covered in bruises," she sneered. "Peculiar, isn't it?" From that day on, Anna never dared to wear a short-sleeved shirt again. She moved through the house like a shadow, rising early to cook and clean, only to end the day alone in her cold room. The calls with Kevin grew infrequent, their early love fading into a terrifying silence. One sweltering afternoon, as Anna was trimming vegetables on the porch, a sleek black luxury car pulled up to the gate. Mr. Harrison stepped out, dressed in a crisp white shirt and carrying a basket of fruit, his gaze calm yet profound. Arthur came out to greet his old friend warmly. Eleanor, however, merely curled her lip into a smirk, muttering sarcastically, "What good is all that money? To live alone at his age. He's nothing but a failure." Mr. Harrison only smiled, his eyes following Anna as she timidly brought out tea. His gaze made her heart race. From that day on, he visited more frequently, always with vague excuses. The townspeople began to whisper not about his presence, but about Eleanor's increasingly foul temper and Anna's deepening retreat into herself. Anna hated the confusing flutter in her chest whenever she met the eyes of this man old enough to be her father. But all he ever offered her was a warm silence, free of judgment and pity. One afternoon, Eleanor berated Anna viciously for accidentally knocking over a teapot, the scalding water splashing across the back of her hand. Anna fled to the backyard, intending to plunge it into a rain barrel, only to find Mr. Harrison standing there. He didn't look at her, but quietly pulled a small tube of ointment from his coat pocket. "You should put this on, or it will blister." She took it hesitantly, her eyes stinging with unshed tears, forcing a smile. "I'm all right, sir. I'm used to it." For the first time, he looked directly into her eyes, his voice deep and steady. "No one is born to get used to being in pain, my child." That one sentence left her stunned. From that day on, the quiet moments between them grew more frequent. He might sit in the yard watching the neighborhood children play, and Anna would silently place a glass of iced tea beside him. They exchanged no words, but shared an understanding that felt ancient. One evening, a torrential rain began to fall, and Mr. Harrison stopped in to take shelter. The rest of the family was out, leaving only Anna at home. After she served him some water in the living room, he stared out at the rain and asked unexpectedly, "Do you know much about your birth mother?" Anna was taken aback. "I do, sir. But she lives far in the countryside. We've rarely spoken since I got married." Mr. Harrison simply gave a slight nod, his eyes suddenly dark and distant. That night, the storm was too severe for him to leave. So, Mr. Harrison had to stay over. Anna prepared a simple sleeping mat for him in a side room. Though they were separated by a wall, sleep escaped them both. Lying in the dark, listening to the rain, Anna's heart was in turmoil. She couldn't name the emotion rising within her. All she knew was that the lonely void in her heart had finally been touched by another's gaze, leaving behind a deep and persistent ache. The rain came down in sheets that night, with violent gusts of wind that battered the house. Anna woke in the middle of the night to find the house pitch black, save for the faint, flickering light of an oil lamp from an inner room. Feeling a chill, she got up to find another blanket. As she passed through the courtyard, she froze. Hanging on the pole under the eaves was a man's moss-green jacket, soaked through. She stared in shock. No one in the house owned a jacket like that. The next morning, the rain had stopped, but the yard was still flooded. Arthur came out onto the porch early, looked around in silence, and then called to Anna. "Did anyone visit us last night, my child?" Anna shook her head. The strange jacket was gone. No one else in the family said a word, as if nothing had happened. There was only one odd detail. On the latch of her bedroom door was the clear, wet print of a man's hand. A week later, Mr. Harrison returned, his expression as placid as ever. But for some reason, his presence now filled her with a sense of guilt. It was a guilt for something that had never happened, or perhaps for something that had, but which she could no longer remember. The news of Anna's pregnancy struck the family like a lightning bolt. Her body had been tired and nauseous for days, so she went to the doctor. When he smiled and confirmed she was over 6 weeks along, Anna went numb. She didn't know what to do, or if she even had the right to keep this child. That night, as she reached the gate to her home, Eleanor blocked her path, her eyes blazing with fury. "You're pregnant, aren't you?" she hissed. "Your husband hasn't been home in a year. Whose child is it?" Her voice tore through the quiet evening. When Arthur ran out to intervene, Eleanor shoved him aside. Anna collapsed to her knees. She didn't cry or protest, only whispered 2 words, "I'm sorry." But in Eleanor's eyes, it was a full confession. Before long, the rumor had spread like wildfire through Cedar Creek. They whispered she was having an affair with Mr. Harrison, the wealthy older man who often visited her father-in-law. Anna lived like a ghost in the house, unable to eat, unable to sleep. Kevin called, his voice as cold as ice. "Is that child mine?" Anna whispered back, I don't know anymore." It was the last time he ever called her. A week later, Mr. Harrison returned. As he stepped into the yard, his eyes met Anna's. They were bloodshot, but unbroken. He walked straight into the house and said something that left Eleanor stunned into silence. "If you need someone to take responsibility, I will." Mr. Harrison's declaration was the spark that lit the fuse. The story was now the scandal of the entire town. Aunt Carol, one of Kevin's paternal aunts, immediately demanded a formal family meeting to get to the bottom of it. Gathered in the old family hall, under the scrutinizing gaze of a dozen relatives, she announced, her voice like steel, "I demand that Arthur's family settle this. If that child isn't Kevin's, then you must be decisive. We cannot allow this kind of corrupt woman to tarnish the family name." Anna sat there, as still and silent as a stone statue. No one asked for her side of the story. Arthur could only bow his head in silence, while Eleanor, after a long sigh, stood and delivered her final verdict. "If Anna does not name the father by the end of this week, I will throw her out of this house." The next morning, Anna sat huddled in a corner of the kitchen. Sunlight streamed through a crack in the blinds, illuminating her still flat stomach. She picked up her phone, her thumb hovering over her mother Diane's number, but she couldn't bring herself to press it. She knew if her mother heard the news, she would demand that Anna leave this place immediately. But where would she go? She had no home, no money, no honor, and not a single person who believed her. She didn't weep, she only pressed a hand to her belly and whispered a silent, formless apology. That afternoon, Mr. Harrison arrived again. This time, there was no polite pretense. He strode directly into the main room where the family was gathered. "I wish to speak to the whole family," he announced. He looked directly at Anna, his gaze not one of affection, but of duty. "I will take full and complete responsibility for the child in Anna's womb." Eleanor collapsed onto a chair. Arthur's eyes widened in disbelief. Only Anna remained standing, frozen, her lips trembling. She wanted to scream that it wasn't true. But Mr. Harrison gave her a slight, firm nod, his eyes seeming to say, "Let me carry this burden." They say that when a man steps up to take the blame for a woman the world has cast out, he is either a fool, or he is paying a debt to the past. For Mr. Harrison, it was not a debt of kindness. It was a debt of blood. That night, in a small motel room, he sat alone with a glass of whiskey. On the table lay a faded photograph of his younger self beside a girl named Diane, his first love. 25 years ago, he had cowardly walked away when their families forbade their love. From the moment he met Anna, he had been haunted by the uncanny resemblance. When he learned Anna's age, he was staggered to realize she had been born exactly 1 year after they had parted ways. He suspected Anna was his own flesh and blood. He no longer had time to wait for a DNA test. He had only the responsibility of a father who had never been named. Before he left, he sent a letter to Arthur. "I cannot be certain Anna is my daughter," he wrote. "But if she is, then what I am doing is only right. And if she is not, then please consider this my way of repaying a debt to the woman I abandoned all those years ago." 3 days later, Diane, Anna's birth mother, appeared at the Thompsons' gate. Her hair was streaked with gray, her clothes worn and faded. Seeing her mother, Anna froze for a moment before running into her arms. "What did you do wrong?" Diane asked, her voice tight. "To be tormented like this. I don't know. Mom. I don't know anything." Anna sobbed. That evening, Diane asked to speak with Arthur alone. She pulled out an old letter. The ink faded but still legible. "Mr. Harrison was once the love of my life," she confessed. "We were going to have a child together, but I never had the chance to tell him." Arthur was speechless. "Are you saying that Anna is Mr. Harrison's daughter?" Diane nodded softly. The next morning, mother and daughter sat by the pond behind the house. Diane recounted the entire story of her past. Anna's mind reeled. Should she be happy to have found her birth father, or horrified that the child in her womb could be the product of incest? She frantically searched her memory of that fateful, stormy night. Was she fully conscious? Who entered her room? If it was her biological father, no. She screamed in the crushing silence of her own mind. She had done nothing wrong. But her silent screams could not drown out the horrifying suspicion that was now growing inside her. That May, the sun beat down on Cedar Creek like a furnace. 25 years prior, under this very same sun, Mr. Harrison and Diane had been forced apart. Now, it seemed that same tragedy was destined to repeat itself with their daughter. In the days that followed, Hana lived in torment. She didn't eat. She didn't sleep, her body growing thin and frail. Diane was heartbroken and wanted to take her to a hospital. But Hana just shook her head. "I'm not tired, Mom. I'm just scared." She was terrified that a DNA test would be a death sentence for her unborn child. She was terrified she wouldn't have the courage to face the truth. One afternoon, Hana quietly traveled to a private clinic in the city. She asked the doctor about getting an abortion. The old doctor looked at her with kind eyes. "Where is your husband? Who is the child's father?" Hana just bowed her head in silence. He set down his pen and spoke gently. "Young woman, if in your heart you believe this child is innocent, then do not be so quick to discard it because of the mistakes of adults." Those words were like a ray of light piercing through the darkness of Hana's soul. That night, she left a short letter for her mother. "If this child is the result of a mistake, then I will bear the sin for them. But if this child is proof of love, then I will protect them until the end." The next morning, she took a bus to Houston, heading to a large hospital to get a DNA test. 4 days later, the hospital called to say the results were in. Hana stood frozen before the hospital gates, her feet as heavy as lead. If that paper confirmed Mr. Harrison was her biological father, she would leave this place, give birth in secret, and never see anyone from her past again. But just then, a text message arrived from an unknown number. "I am Mr. Harrison's assistant. He has just been admitted to the hospital. If you care for him at all, please come immediately." At that, Hana's legs gave out, and she collapsed right there on the sidewalk. Meanwhile, back at home, after succeeding in driving Hana away, Eleanor felt a strange and hollow emptiness. One afternoon, while cleaning her husband's old bookshelf, she stumbled upon a yellowed envelope with no sender's name. She curiously opened it. The words inside made her hands tremble violently. "To my dear friend, Arthur. You may not know this, but Diane and I had a child together. If I should ever return and find that girl living as the daughter-in-law in your own home, I beg you to treat her with kindness. The girl has been without a father for 20 years. Signed, Harrison." Eleanor fell to the floor, her mind spinning. Her daughter-in-law was Mr. Harrison's own child, which meant the baby in her womb was. She let out a choked scream and collapsed, her limbs convulsing. She had suffered a massive stroke. Luckily, a neighbor found her and rushed her to the hospital. Lying there, motionless, her lips constantly mumbled one name in her delirium: Hana. At the same time, in Houston, Hana stood numbly before the emergency room where Mr. Harrison lay. The man who had always been so calm and steady was now breathing with the help of a machine. His face pale. A nurse approached and handed her an envelope. "He instructed us to give this to an Hana. If she came." With trembling hands, Hana opened it. Inside was a DNA test result, stamped in red. She slowly read each word, and then her legs buckled, tears finally streaming down her face. The final line was unequivocal: probability of paternity between Mr. Harrison and Ms. Hana, exclusionary. There is no father-child relationship. She began to sob. Great, racking sobs. For the first time after months of terror, she cried like a child. "My baby." She wept. "I'm so sorry. I doubted you. I thought you were a sin. But you're not. You're a gift. You're hope. You are the most beautiful truth in my life." The day Hana returned to Cedar Creek, a light rain was falling. They say the endless drizzle in the countryside is like the sorrowful fate of a woman. But today, Hana no longer huddled for shelter. She walked with a steady gait, clutching a thin file, her eyes clear and unafraid. She returned not to clear her name, but to end the days of being buried alive by injustice. The first person she went to see was the head of the family. In the same hall where harsh judgments were once passed, there was now dead silence. She placed the DNA test result on the table. her voice clear and steady. "This is the test between myself and Mr. Harrison, the man you all accused of being the child's father. The conclusion is clear. We are not related by blood." The room was silent. "As for the baby's father," she continued, "it is my husband. Kevin came home on the night of the storm. But he was too afraid to admit it. None of you asked me. You only condemned me." With that, she turned and walked away. She didn't need an apology. For her, the clean, quiet truth was enough. On her way back, Anna stopped by the hospital where Eleanor was. The older woman had woken from her stroke. Her face ashen, her mouth twisted. Unable to speak, Anna walked in and quietly placed a copy of the test results on the bedside table. "I am not Mr. Harrison's daughter, and the child in my womb is not a sin. It is the result of the one night my husband returned the night you deliberately kept secret." Eleanor let out a garbled, desperate sound, tears streaming from her sunken eyes. Anna continued, "I am going to leave. But I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I want my child to grow up without the burden of hatred." She walked away, leaving behind a long and painful past, leaving the venomous stares and the darkness that had once consumed her honor. That evening, Anna sat on the porch of the motel room with her mother, a hand resting on her stomach. For the first time in months, she smiled. She thought she had lost everything, but she realized she still had her child, and she still had herself. The next afternoon, a buzz went through Cedar Creek. Kevin, Anna's husband, was back. He stepped off an old bus, tall and thin, his face gaunt. The townspeople stared at him like a stranger. He stood silently before the gates of the house that was once his home, then turned away, unable to find the courage to enter. That night, Kevin found the motel where Anna was staying. He knocked, and only on the third knock did she open the door. She looked at him like an old acquaintance, with no resentment left, only a love that had run dry. "I'm sorry," Kevin stammered. "Why didn't you say anything back then?" Anna asked simply. He sank onto the steps, burying his face in his hands. The man who once boasted he would provide for his wife and child was now as cowardly as a beggar at the threshold of a happiness he had thrown away. "I don't deserve to be your husband anymore," he choked out. "But, can you let me be our child's father?" Anna was silent for a long moment. "You don't need to ask for my permission," she said, her voice steady. "My child doesn't need a pitiful father. They need a man with courage. If you want to be a father, start by learning how to be a man." Kevin said nothing. He slowly rose to his feet. He gave her a deep, long bow, a bow to the wife he had abandoned, and the child he had denied. That night, Anna looked up at the sky as the baby gave a gentle kick inside her. She smiled. "Do you feel that, little one?" she whispered. "Your father has come back. But your mother doesn't need someone to lean on. I just need you to be strong, just as I have been." Eleanor lay in her hospital bed, her hands trembling, her speech still slurred. Kevin walked in that morning. "I came back that night," he said, his voice hoarse. "Why didn't you say anything? Why did you let my wife be humiliated and thrown out?" Eleanor closed her eyes, tears leaking from the corners. She took a pen and shakily wrote on a piece of paper, "Because I hate her." Kevin was stunned. "Why?" She wrote again. "Because she is her mother's daughter." Kevin didn't understand. But Arthur, who had been standing quietly behind him, understood everything. He slowly began to tell a story he had buried for decades. Long ago, before she married him, Eleanor had been deeply in love with a man named Lawrence. It was her first love, but she was forced into an arranged marriage. Years later, she ran into her old flame by chance, and learned that he had a wife and daughter, and that his daughter was none other than Diane, Anna's mother. "And so," Arthur sighed, "from the day your mother knew Anna was Diane's daughter, she saw her with nothing but hatred. Not because of anything Anna did, but because the shadow of the past was too large in her heart." Kevin collapsed into a chair. He couldn't believe this entire tragedy stemmed from a woman living in the ghost of her first love, nurturing a decades-old resentment and unleashing it on an innocent person. Just then, Anna walked in, unaware of the confession. She was carrying a container of chicken and lotus seed soup, a dish Eleanor had once loved. Seeing Kevin, Arthur, and the tears on Eleanor's face, Hana froze. Kevin turned to her, his eyes red. I know everything. Mother hid the fact that I came home. She wanted you thrown out. All because she hated the past. Hana said nothing. She walked over and placed the container on the table. She looked at Eleanor, the mother-in-law who had pushed her to the depths of despair, and spoke softly. I made some chicken soup. Without onions. Please eat. As long as we are alive, there is a chance to start over. I forgive you. Not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to let my child be born carrying the weight of hatred. Eleanor broke down completely. Her sobs, ragged and choked, like a great stone, had finally shattered in her chest. After that day, Hana moved out. She rented a small house by the river, about 5 miles from the village, far enough to find peace. On her first day, she sat on the porch, hand on her belly, and looked up at the clear blue sky. My child, she whispered, from today on, we will write our own story. Kevin tried to visit many times, sometimes bringing soup, other times prenatal vitamins, but each time, Hana politely refused him at the gate. I'm no longer angry, she told him. But I cannot live as if nothing happened. Kevin understood. He only asked for permission to stop by and fulfill his duties as a father. Hana agreed. After being discharged, Eleanor would sit quietly in her wheelchair on the porch. One afternoon, she said to Arthur in a trembling voice, My dear, I was so wrong. He simply nodded. A late apology couldn't erase the past. But at least, she had finally bowed her head. As for Mr. Harrison, after he recovered, he sent Hana a text. I am moving to Canada and won't bother you again. But if you ever need a safe harbor, do not hesitate. I have never stopped loving you as if you were my own daughter. The short message made Hana weep, not for romantic love, but because, for the first time in her life, she felt the unconditional love of a father. One late autumn morning, as mist still blanketed the fields, a letter arrived for Hana, delivered by an acquaintance of Mr. Harrison. His handwriting was as calm and clear as ever. My dear Hana, the letter began. I am writing to tell you something that perhaps no one ever has. You are deeply worthy of love. Not because you are gentle, but because you have never done anything wrong. Yet you were forced to carry the burdens of every adult's mistakes. The test says you are not my biological child. But in my heart, I need no such paper. You are the daughter of the woman I loved for a lifetime. I have left a small bank account for you. Please do not see it as pity. I only want you to be able to build a life for yourself, dependent on no one. I am leaving this time for good. But if you ever find yourself in Canada, please come to 118 Chestnut Street. An old man will be there waiting for you, not as a father, but as someone who loves you dearly. Hana sat in silence, tears falling freely onto the page. They were not tears of bitterness, but of profound gratitude. She picked up her phone and sent a short text. Thank you. I will live a good life. Less than a week later, as Hana was hanging laundry in the yard, a woman in a professional business suit arrived at her door. She introduced herself as Mr. Harrison's personal attorney, here to deliver some important documents. In the small house, the lawyer calmly explained the provisions Mr. Harrison had arranged before leaving the country. First, he pledged his reputation and assets to formally protect the honor of Hana and her child. Anyone who attempted to slander them would be prosecuted. Second, he was transferring ownership of a 2-bedroom apartment in a new development in the city to her, a stable place to start over. And finally, there was a handwritten letter addressed to her unborn child. I hope that when you grow up, it read, you will never be ashamed of your mother's past, but will instead be proud that she stood tall alone in the middle of a storm. If you ever face hardship, you need only say that you are Hana's child, and someone will be there to help. Hana clutched the letter, sobbing not for the material gifts, but because for the first time, she felt unconditionally protected. That same morning, Kevin received a call from the prenatal clinic. A nurse gently reminded him of Hana's important checkup next week. To Kevin, those ordinary words felt like a door creaking open. That afternoon, he went into town and, for the first time, awkwardly selected newborn essentials. He left the basket on her porch with a crumpled note. I don't dare ask you to forgive me. I only ask to be a true father. That evening, Anna read the note. Tears fell unexpectedly, not of renewed love, but of quiet gratitude for a man who had run away, and was now learning how to stay. The next morning, she called him. I have my checkup next week. If you want to come. Be on time. He was in the ultrasound room. When he saw the tiny shape of his child on the screen, his heart seized. My child, he whispered. Daddy is so sorry. As they left, Anna took the initiative. If you're serious about this, start by being a father who listens. Kevin simply nodded. One afternoon at the end of the year, as the winter winds howled, Anna went into labor. Her mother frantically called for a car while Kevin bolted from his workshop like a madman. At the hospital, a silent vigil formed. Her mother stood with red-rimmed eyes. Kevin arrived, gasping for breath. Eleanor was there in her wheelchair, her dry eyes fixed on the closed delivery room door. Anna's cries echoed from within. And then, a clear, strong wail broke through the air, a cry that seemed to tear down all prejudice. A declaration to the world. I am here. And my mother has won. Kevin sank into a chair, his hands shaking. Eleanor covered her face and wept with tears of remorse. A nurse emerged to announce a healthy baby boy. 6 pounds and 13 ounces. Kevin walked in. Anna lay on the bed, exhausted but radiant. She looked at him and whispered, "He looks like you." Kevin felt his heart shatter and mend all at once. He stepped closer, his hand trembling as he touched his son's tiny finger. "Hello, son," he breathed. "Dad is here." 3 days later, Anna was discharged. The baby, pink and content, lay nestled in her arms. She sat by the window in her small house by the river, the warm spring sun stretching out like silk. Kevin had arrived early. He brought no flowers, only a leather-bound journal and a pen. He asked softly, "Have you thought of a name for him?" Anna gazed at her son, gently stroking his chubby cheek. "I want to name him Asher," she said. "After everything, I just want him to have a life of peace, without storms." Kevin nodded, then opened the journal to a page where he had already written a name. "I was hoping," he began, "we could name him Harrison Lucas. Harrison, to remember the man who protected you when the world turned its back. And Lucas, which means light, because he is the light that pulled us out of the darkness." Anna fell silent. The baby lay there, between two names, between two histories. Just then, Eleanor was wheeled into the yard by a family member. On her lap was a hand-knitted blanket. For the first time, she had taken the initiative to do something for her grandson. "I don't dare ask to name him," she said, her voice trembling. "I only hope he can take his mother's name." Because Anna carried this burden all by herself. The room grew quiet. And then, Anna smiled. A smile that was whole and profound. "Then let's call him Asher Harrison Lucas Nguyen," she said. "Nguyen is my family name. Asher for the peaceful, happy life I wish for him, and Harrison Lucas. So he will always be a light for those who were once lost." It wasn't just a name. It was a story of where he came from and a tribute to the people who had loved him in their own ways. Kevin tearfully wrote the name in the journal. Eleanor wept silently. And Anna. She gently squeezed her son's hand and whispered, "Hello, Asher Harrison Lucas. Welcome to this world." In the spring that followed, a quiet change came over Cedar Creek. The malicious gossip faded. Instead, people saw Anna taking her handsome baby boy to the market, her posture confident and strong. They saw Eleanor sitting on her porch, knitting sweaters for her grandson, sometimes asking if her daughter-in-law would be home for dinner. The scolding was gone, replaced by an old woman learning how to love again. They saw Kevin stopping by Anna's house every evening after work, bringing a carton of milk or a picture book. He didn't demand anything. He just quietly fulfilled the duties of a father growing from his mistakes. Some nights, Anna wrote in a small journal unsent letters to Mr. Harrison, who had passed away peacefully in Canada just a few months after her son was born. "My dear friend," she wrote, "my son is growing every day. He has your deep-set eyes, but my high forehead. Every time he smiles, I remember the words you wrote to me. You are deeply worthy of love. I promise I will teach him how to love others with kindness. Just as you taught me. A child born without a father by his side. A mother who was once cast out. A grandmother who lived in hatred. A father who once denied his own blood. And a man with no blood ties who was the only one to protect them until the very end. All of these lives, which seemed to have been shattered beyond repair, were ultimately pieced back together by the first cries of a small, innocent child. The baby was not born to continue a tragedy, but to resolve it. Thank you all for listening. We'd love to hear your thoughts. So please leave a comment below. Your support means the world to us.